Howdy folks, welcome back to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. The big gaming news this week was the unveil of Star Citizen's first-person shooter module at PAX Australia. It seemed to go down quite well with the crowd. Even if most of the comments on YouTube were complaining about the fake and very forced tactical voice comms of the guys actually playing through the demo. We can see a number of things from watching the footage. If you have a look at the top of the heads-up display, you can see that there are three different modes: tactical, medical and overview, which suggests, even though we can't see it here because all four of the team members are in tactical mode, but it does suggest that you're going to have a sort of team leader facility for whoever is operating the heads-up display in overview mode, and a medic facility for whoever's operating the heads-up display in medical mode. And that also suggests that because it's just a feature of your heads-up display, selecting the kind of information that's available to you while you're playing, that you'll be able to change between the different modes on the fly. So if your team leader goes down, anybody else can activate overview mode and command the team. Or if your medic goes down, anybody else can switch to medical mode and have their heads-up display displaying real-time vital sign statistics of the rest of the team. This is just speculation, of course. All four of the team members here are in tactical mode, and probably because tactical mode is all that they have ready for PAX Australia. Coming up here, you're going to see that you're going to have the ability to deploy personal shields that you can use to take cover behind. One of the other things that they revealed was the ability to deploy holograms as decoys. Guy's coming around the corner there, pistol out, spots a target, takes a couple of shots, it's a decoy. The real guy's over there. And that guy is about to launch an EMP grenade, which screws up your heads-up display. Takes your systems offline for a couple of seconds. What seemed to get most people excited, though, was the idea that, well, you know, it's Star Citizen, you're in space. What happens if you turn the artificial gravity off? Well, you get zero-G combat. This obviously all selected highlights from the Star Citizen live stream broadcast from PAX Australia, where they showed the debut of Star Citizen's first-person shooter module. Okay, well, you know, that looks great, Jingles. When can we actually get our hands on it? Well, good question. Glad you asked. And the answer is no earlier than the first quarter of 2015. This is the Star Citizen roadmap. It's what they have planned for release and in what order. They've just released Arena Commander 0.92, which features a number of changes to Arena Commander. They've doubled the size of the play-in areas, which was not before time. The play-in areas were far too small. Number of changes to the flight models, in particular the way that targeting works. Late this year they plan to nail down Arena Commander at version 1.0. Then in 2015, early 2015, the first person shooter module, then the planet side and social module launch, i.e. wandering around the space stations and the planet surfaces, and basically what you're doing when you're not shooting at anything. Arena Commander 2.0 is going to be multi-crew ships. You'll finally be able to actually get into and fly your constellation. Squadron 42 Chapter 1, which is the single-player campaign, and could, I suppose, officially be called the official release of the game, except without the persistent universe multiplayer side, which is coming later. Squadron 42 Chapter 1, they estimate 50 hours of gameplay in the single-player campaign, and they're splitting it up into 5 episodes, each of 10 hours duration. They estimate there'll be a 2 to 3 month lead time between the release of each episode, and then once that's all done and dusted, they're going to put into alpha test the whole persistent universe thing, where, you know, the real multiplayer meat and bones of the game. Personally, I don't believe this game is going to be finished, and when I say finished, I mean everything that you can see there, plus the persistent universe out of alpha, out of beta, and into general release anytime earlier than 2016. Now, when you take a look at where they started, where they are now, how far they still have to go, and how long it's taken them to get here, technically they started developing Star Citizen on the 10th of October 2012. We're now 3/5, 2/3 of the way through the development cycle, and it's 2 years later. We're now in the 3rd year of development, and all that they really have available for us to get our hands on is the hangar module. But there's only, you know, there's a limit to how many times I'm prepared to throw $250 at Chris Roberts just to get yet another 3D model of a nice shiny starship that I can't actually do anything other than look at. And aside from that, not all of the ships that I've purchased are even available for display in the hangar yet. There's Arena Commander, which was the second major thing that you can actually get your hands on and play, if you like, in Star Citizen. but it's not finished. It's a bit limited, and every time I start getting to grips with it, they keep changing the way the flight model and the targeting system works. Then, of course, there's the racing system, which is fun, but there's a limited number of times I can show you footage of me driving in a circle around a racetrack before it starts to get uninteresting. And so, those of you who complain that I'm not putting up enough Star Citizen videos, it's really not my fault, I'm afraid. I'm not going to start recycling the same old stuff just to be able to say I'm one of those guys that puts regular Star Citizen content up. So, the ball is very much in Chris Roberts' court here. If he starts pushing out new stuff that I can get my hands on and take a look at, I will be only too happy to show it to you guys on YouTube. The good news, of course, is that, we're in the final third of the development cycle now, so the new stuff is coming fast and furious, starting next year, as you can see by looking at the roadmap. So, I hadn't forgotten about Star Citizen. I guess that's what I'm saying here. I know I'm not putting a lot of Star Citizen videos up, but I'm not doing that because there isn't an awful lot for me to show you that I haven't already shown you, and I'm not going to just start recycling content just to be able to say, hey, I do Star Citizen videos. But the good stuff is coming, and it's going to be coming a hell of a lot faster than it has in the past. There is, of course, another space game which has an equally illustrious pedigree, very similar in concept, but very, very different in execution. It is, of course, Elite Dangerous, which very recently went into the third phase of the premium beta test. There are now 2,400 star systems available for exploration, and the merest fraction of the 400 billion that are going to be in the final release. Of course, one of the major reasons why Star Citizen has been taking so long to develop and Elite Dangerous has been blasting through the development process is that Elite uses procedural generation to generate those 400 billion star systems. In Star Citizen, absolutely everything is handcrafted and hand-placed. Does that make one of them any better than the other? No, of course not. It's just two different ways of achieving pretty much the same thing. But it doesn't mean that Elite Dangerous has got to be the biggest game ever made. In the Elite Dangerous beta test, I'm already experiencing the kind of massive, persistent multiplayer universe that's only slated for alpha testing in Star Citizen a year from now. If you were forced to choose between the two, it's really just a question of how patient you are and which art direction you prefer. Personally, I love them both, but I can at least play Elite Dangerous now, and I'm having a fantastic time doing it. In other gaming news, a lot of people scratched their head in bewilderment when they heard that Obsidian Entertainment were doing Armored Warfare, a new tank battle game. They thought, hang on, Obsidian Entertainment, aren't they the role-playing game guys? And yeah, they were. But it's all starting to make a lot of sense now, particularly in light of the recent news that was announced about Commander and crew skill development. Your crews are apparently going to be tied to the tank in which they came. You can't transfer them between vehicles. But they're going to level up in exactly the way that you do in a role-playing game, anything from level 1 all the way up to a maximum of level 60. Commanders are going to be slightly different. Commanders are going to be able to be transferred between different tanks, and there are going to be various different types of commanders, with various different types of skills which affect the kind of tanks that they can drive, and how well they influence the crews of those tanks. And I don't think anybody was really surprised at the idea that Obsidian Entertainment were going to introduce RPG elements into their tank battle game, and crew leveling up is the obvious way to do it. World of Tanks does it, but, this is Obsidian Entertainment. When they do it, they're going to take it to the next level. The closed beta for Armored Warfare is still accepting sign-ups, details in the video description, and is due to go live this year. So, the other big news this week, and one that's actually directly affected a lot of you, is the controversy over YouTube and Google with their decision to change the way certain high-resolution types of videos are viewed on YouTube. To sum up what's happened over the last couple of days, any videos that have been uploaded at high frame rates, like, 60 frames per second, in high resolution, are now capable of being streamed via YouTube in exactly the same kind of frame rate and resolution that they were uploaded, which is fantastic news if you have the kind of connection that supports that kind of video streaming. And perhaps more relevantly to a lot of you out there, you have to have the right kind of browser that supports that kind of video streaming. And Mozilla Firefox, which is a very popular browser and is the browser that I had been using up until now, is not one of those browsers. I found out the hard way when trying to watch one of my own videos shortly after uploading it that it just didn't work in anything higher than 480p. Now, despite the fact that I do put videos up on YouTube every day for a living, I'm not actually that much of a technical expert on things like video streaming, so I don't even pretend to claim to understand the ins and outs of various different video encoding formats and why things were working in one browser and they weren't working in another. What I know is that Google hadn't kept this a secret from the developers of the other browsers, and Firefox, for reasons known only to themselves, had just refused to update their browser to conform to the new media standards. And so a lot of people who were using Firefox as a browser got a very, very nasty surprise when they tried to watch their favourite videos at high resolution right after these changes had been implemented. I was one of them. Immediately after these changes happened, I did a couple of test videos encoded in various different formats in an attempt to find some way of uploading a video that Firefox users were going to be able to view in high resolution, and I was kind of partially successful. What I didn't want to do was not be able to take advantage of the new 60 frame per second streaming format, while at the same time have my videos still available to people who were still using browsers like Firefox. This isn't restricted to Firefox, by the way. People with all different kinds of browsers, even Google's own Chrome browser, have been reporting problems, but the Firefox users seem to be the majority of those affected. I've seen comments on various videos that I've put up from people saying, Jingles, go back to the old way of doing things. You know, your videos are no longer viewable for me. I'm not doing anything different. I've always uploaded videos in high resolution and high frame rate. What is happening is that Google is changing the way those kind of videos are streamed to you, the user. So I was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here. On the one hand, I was getting lots and lots of comments from people who did have compatible browsers and did have connections good enough to watch stuff streamed at 1080p and 60 frames per second, saying that it was just amazing, the difference, and it really, really is. If you haven't seen what a YouTube video looks like at 1920 by 1080 resolution, running at 60 frames per second, you really are missing out. Unfortunately, a lot of you are missing out, either because your connection isn't good enough to support that kind of video streaming, or your browser just isn't compatible. Now, there's absolutely nothing I can do about whether or not your browser is compatible. All I can suggest is you switch to using Google Chrome if you're having problems and you know your connection is good enough. That is what I have been forced to do. And I didn't want to use Google Chrome because, you know, it's Google. They're the man. I've used Firefox for years and I liked it. Chrome's better though. I hate to admit it, but I noticed not just improvements in the video streaming, but everything sounded better as well. I really do feel dirty for saying it, but Chrome is a better browser. I tried Chrome when it first came out. I was using Firefox at the time, and I just didn't see any improvements over Firefox to warrant, you know, changing my browser. Firefox worked; it did exactly what I wanted it to do. I kept using Firefox. Well, Firefox no longer does exactly what I want it to do, and so I was forced to switch to Google Chrome, and I honestly do not regret the decision. I mean, I hate Google. Look at how they jerked me around when I went to visit their UK headquarters, but they make a good browser. I'm sorry, but it's true. So, if your internet connection is good enough to support watching high-resolution, high-frame rate videos on YouTube, but you're still unable to watch them because you insist on continuing to use a browser that doesn't support the media extensions required to watch those kind of videos, and that is your choice, there is absolutely nothing I can, or I'm even prepared to do about that. On the other hand, if, for example, you are using a browser like Chrome that does support these media extensions, but you're still unable to watch high-resolution, high-frame rate videos without video stuttering, dropping frame rates, because your internet connection doesn't support it, well, I have to do something about that at my end, if at all possible. So the challenge at my end has been to find a video encoding format in which I can upload a video that ticks as many of the boxes as possible, so that the overwhelming majority of people are going to be able to continue watching my videos in high resolution at whatever frame rate, regardless of what browser you're using, regardless of what update state that browser might be at, regardless of the hardware that you're watching these videos on, and regardless of the level of service you're getting from your ISP. Now it has been one hell of a challenge. But the format that I've settled on seems to tick most of those boxes. The video that you're watching right now, this episode of Mingles with Jingles, has been uploaded at 1080p, but only at 30 frames per second. This is the well, it's not just the first time I've ever done this, because I am not doing anything different. It's Google that have changed the game, but this is also the last time I'm going to be doing this. From now on, I've messed around with trials and settings, and I've done test videos, and I seem to have hit upon a video format that ticks most of the boxes, that allows those of you who can watch videos at 1080p at 60 frames per second to watch videos at 1080p and 60 frames per second. But at the same time, at the other end of the market, those of you who still insist on clinging to using Firefox, for example, can still watch the videos in 720p at 60 frames per second and lower resolutions and lower frame rates. Of course, there are still going to be people who slip through the cracks and are restricted to watching videos at 480p for one reason or another. I have quite literally done absolutely everything that I can to try to make everything as compatible as I can for as many of you as I possibly can. But I know that, due to the way this thing works, somebody's going to slip through the cracks, and for whatever reason, might not even be anything that they have any control over, they're going to be sitting there staring at this video in 480p, wondering why they get nothing but a black screen or a "this video is not available" message when they try to watch it in anything higher. If you fall into that category, I am deeply sorry. I don't know what to do about it. I have tried everything I possibly can. Please accept my sincere apologies. And yet, despite making the effort to ensure that this video was only encoded and uploaded at 30 frames per second to make sure that the maximum possible number of people would be able to watch this episode of Mingles with Jingles in 1080p resolution, after uploading it, flashed up my version of Firefox to go and check the results, and it's still only available in 720p at the most. Of course, at the same time, the internet being what it is, there's also going to be that loud, very vocal minority who've got nothing better to do with their time but sit browsing YouTube on the same shitty browser that they installed in 2008 and have never updated since, complaining that I just don't care about the little guy anymore, and I've done nothing but knuckle under to my evil Google overlords. My message to you is that you can go and take a flying fuck at a rolling donut for all I care. I am very happy to disappoint the likes of you. So that's the situation with Google and YouTube that's sprung up over the course of the last week. I had no idea it was coming. I pretty much had to find out the hard way, the same as most of you did, when I was suddenly unable to watch my own videos using my Firefox browser in anything better than 480p resolution. It's taken a while to try to come up with an acceptable compromise. I think I've hit on the best possible solution that pleases as many people as possible and disappoints as few people as possible. I sincerely hope it's enough. Anyway, moving on to something slightly different. Sometimes this is me. Sometimes this is me. Sometimes this is me. Most of the time, this is me. This, however, is not me, but you could be forgiven for thinking it was. That is an uncanny resemblance. This was actually posted on my Facebook page by, I'll have a stab at pronouncing his name, Radmilo Radijevic, who, based on the name, I think probably comes from Serbia. This is his uncle. His uncle's name is Goran Josefovic. He's a handsome bastard, isn't he? Looks just like me. You lucky devil. Look, he's got his own Uncle Jingles. Have any of you got an Uncle Jingles hidden away somewhere? Somebody who looks just like me. The kind of uncle who gets drunk at family parties and gropes your mother. If you have, then by all means stick them up on my Facebook page. I could do with a laugh as much as anybody else. Anyway, moving along swiftly, I do intend in this episode of Mingles with Jingles to continue the tradition of actually responding to your questions and comments in previous episodes of Mingles with Jingles. I've been pretty good at it in the last couple of weeks, and long may that tradition continue. So I'm going to start off this week with wishing a happy birthday message. It's somebody's birthday today. Soo Jun Hao from Singapore. I hope I pronounced your name right. I'm almost certain I got it wrong. I don't know how old you are, you didn't say, but you did say that today was going to be your birthday, so happy birthday to you, hope you have a great time, and many more to come. Next up, lots of jimmies got rustled in last week's Mingles with Jingles when I was talking about a couple of suggestions that had been floated by some of the World of Tanks games developers. One in particular, they were talking about changing the way high explosive squash head, certain kinds of premium ammunition worked. A lot of you thought it was a great idea to have, for example, APCR premium ammunition while having high penetration to do less damage. That was one of the ideas that they were speculating on and considering. Another one was for HESH, high explosive squash head ammunition, to work differently. At the moment, HESH is just high explosive ammunition that has higher penetration. But they were floating the idea of completely changing the way HESH ammunition worked and making it sort of stun ammunition, the kind of ammunition that basically disabled your crew for anything between 3 to 5 seconds. And a lot of you thought that's an absolutely terrible idea. And to be completely fair, a lot of you had very, very good reasons for thinking that was an absolutely terrible idea. Those of you who play a lot of multiplayer competitive games will be aware that whenever you introduce the stun mechanic into a game, you have to walk a very, very fine line between making it playable and not making it completely bloody overpowered. There was a time, for example, in World of Warcraft, PvP in World of Warcraft, when characters that played rogues, or rather players who played rogues, the character is what they're playing, if they were good enough, could 100% completely keep an opponent stunned while whittling their health down, and there was absolutely nothing that the victim could do about it. This is no fun whatsoever. I mean, it's a lot of fun for the rogue, it's a lot of fun for the person doing the stunning. It's not so much fun for the person being stunned. Nobody likes to die in a multiplayer game with no option of being able to do anything about it. It's no fun whatsoever. Look at, for example, the British Tier 9 medium tank, the Centurion Mark 7. It has a choice of 3 guns, 2 20-pounders and 105mm. Most people use the 105mm gun because it's a better gun. And the 105mm has the option of firing HESH ammunition. It only fires a shot every 10 seconds, however. The 20-pounder gun, on the other hand, well, with a gun rammer, ventilation and a 100% crew, fires a shot every 4.81 seconds. If you could fire HESH ammunition from that gun, and this ammunition was going to keep an enemy tank stunned and, immobile and unable to defend itself for anything between 3 and 5 seconds, it's entirely possible to completely keep that tank pinned down, with the player of that tank just being unable to do a thing to defend himself. While you're not doing any damage to him, all the tanks around you are. But hang on a minute. You can't fire HESH ammunition with a 20-pounder gun. You have to have the 105mm gun in order to use that kind of ammunition. And that gun fires, well, minimum of 10 seconds between shots. So you wouldn't be able to completely stun lock an enemy tank if you were firing HESH from the 105. But more than one Centurion could. Yes, but that requires coordination between people in random teams, and that doesn't happen. Yeah, but it does in platoons. Imagine a platoon of 3 Centurion Mark 7s. 2 of them are firing HESH, 1 of them's firing APCR. The 2 firing HESH keep you stunned, the 1 firing APCR kills you. It's not fun. A platoon of coordinated, guys on voice comms, driving Centurion 7-1s, 2 loaded with HESH, 1 loaded with APCR, would be unstoppable. Well, that's not exactly true either, is it? They'd only be unstoppable if the 3 of them kept coming across 1 tank at a time. And let's be realistic here. A coordinated platoon of Mark 7 Centurions, all armed with the 105mm Royal Ordnance gun, they come across any individual tank separated from the rest of his team. He's dead anyway. It doesn't matter what ammunition they're firing. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's true. But, if there's no stun ammunition in the game, that tank always has the option of firing back or running away. He's not guaranteed to die. He has options. Options that you remove if 2 out of the 3 shots that you're firing at him are disabling his crew. Well, yeah, alright, but you're talking as if this is going to happen every single time a platoon of 3 Centurions, 2 of which are armed with HESH, 1 of which is armed with APCR, come across an enemy tank. It's not. The majority of the time they're going to be coming across more than 1 tank. They're never going to have the opportunity, except under rare circumstances, to actually lock 1 tank down with 2 of the tanks while the 3rd one kills him. Yeah, that's true. But it doesn't have to happen every time. It only has to happen once before it becomes unacceptable. Yeah, alright, you got me. Stun ammunition's a terrible idea. Next up, Helgast Soul had a couple of questions. His first question was, Jingles, how long did it take you to get your first Tier 10 tank? And just by way of comparison, he actually registered World of Tanks the same time I did, 3 years ago. and he has just unlocked his first Tier 9, the T30. Well, it didn't take me that long. But there's nothing wrong with it taking that long. Just play the game at your own pace. Have fun playing it. It's not a race to see who can get the first Tier 10. You're not necessarily going to have more fun in top tier games than you do in mid or low tier games. It's all about what you get out of it rather than how big and expensive your tanks are. But to, actually answer his question, how long did it take me to get my first Tier 10 tank? And I actually didn't know. I didn't have a clue. So I had to do some detective work. I went to the World of Tanks website and I had a look at my player profile. And it turns out that I first registered my World of Tanks account on the EU server on the 26th of June 2011. Jeez, that's a long time ago. I didn't realise I'd been playing this game for so long. And I know that the E100 was my first Tier 10 tank, and I can remember not liking it because I was a noob and had no idea how to drive the thing. So I had to have a look to see when I uploaded my first E100 video, and that was exactly 1 year and 1 day later, on the 27th of June 2012. So I obviously got the tank, before that, but that's when I uploaded my first E100 video. So it basically took me a year to get my first Tier 10 tank. And that surprised me because I didn't think it had taken that long, but you can't argue with the numbers. But I mean, I've said this before and I'll say it again and I'll keep saying it. It does not matter how long it takes you to get your first Tier 10 tank. I mean, it took Helghast Soul 3 years. Fine. It doesn't matter if you never get a Tier 10 tank. What matters is that you have fun playing the tanks that you have and you're good at driving the tanks that you have. And a lot of the time that goes hand in hand. You have fun in tanks that you are good at driving because you keep winning and you keep doing well. And for most people, that's why they play these games. At the same time, however, you're not doing yourself any favours if all you do is you keep playing the tanks that you do well in. There's nothing wrong with doing that. You're having fun doing it, but you're never going to get any better unless you start playing the tanks that you don't do as well in, at the tiers of battle that you don't do as well in. For myself, my comfort zone is Tier 6, 7 and 8, with some Tier 9 exceptions. My comfort zone is definitely not Tier 10. And the reason for that, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, is because when you get into Tier 10 matches, there are a lot more players in Tier 10 matches who are as good, if not substantially better, than I am. And I don't do as well in Tier 10 matches. I have a lot more fun playing tanks at Tier 6, 7 and 8, with some Tier 9 exceptions. Mostly we're talking about tanks like the Centurion 7-1, where I can be more of a force on the battlefield, and I can be more of a dominating presence in those kind of matches. And that's entirely natural. You do well, you win, you have more fun. But you're never going to get any better if all you're doing is playing against players who aren't as good as you. You have to play against players who are as good or better than you in order to get better at playing tanks. And for me, and it's different for everybody, for me it means playing more battles at Tier 9 and 10. And I don't want to do it because it's not as much fun. But here's the thing, it's never going to be fun until I start getting good at it. And in order to get good at it, I have to start doing it more. And that's the catch, isn't it? People often say, you've got to get outside your comfort zone. And my traditional response to that has always been, why? I like it in my comfort zone. It's comfortable. But the fact of the matter is that you never get better at anything by competing against people who aren't a challenge. You have to play against people who are a challenge in order to learn from your mistakes and from their example. Otherwise, you're never going to improve. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people out there who, they've got their comfort zone. They've got the kind of tanks that they enjoy playing because they're good at playing those tanks and they're in no rush whatsoever to stretch their legs a little and try something that they're not quite as good at and learn from it. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know what you like and you're good at doing it. By all means, keep doing it. But don't be in any rush to get to Tier 10 if that's the case, because you won't enjoy it. So, yeah, it took me 1 year to get my first Tier 10 tank, the E100, and I didn't enjoy it. I thought it was a bad tank. It's not. It's not a bad tank at all. It's a very, very good tank. I was just terrible at driving it. It took me a long time to get used to the E100. As you know, it takes a lot of people a long time to get used to any new tank. It took me substantially longer than normal to get used to driving the E100. At one point I sold it, and then I bought it again. And finally started actually learning from my experiences in Tier 10 games, and I'm certainly not the world's greatest E100 driver now, but I'm substantially better than I was when I first started. If you were to watch that very first E100 video that I uploaded way back on the 27th of June 2012, oh, it's just embarrassing. I was such a noob. No idea what I was doing. Of course, I've got more experience now with a vast range of different tanks in World of Tanks that it doesn't take me nearly as long to get to grips with the new machine and pretty much figure out, how it should be driven, what it's good at, what it's not good at, what it can do, what it can't do. But at the time, with the E100, oh man, I struggled. I really, really, really struggled. And, for a while with the E100, I thought, oh, I'm getting much better at this. I know what I'm doing now. No, I didn't. I was just firing premium ammunition. And premium ammunition, it will only carry you so far. You'll do well spamming premium ammunition in the E100 against bad players. Good players will still kick your ass. And the E100's actually a good example, because it's another one of those cases of not wanting to get out of your comfort zone. I mean, I thought I was doing really well in the E100 purely because I was spamming gold ammo, and it's not, it's just a crutch for poor performance. A lot of people will use nothing but gold ammunition in the E100 purely and simply because the gun is not that good. It's got the lowest penetration on that 150mm gun of any Tier 10 heavy tank. 235mm of penetration at Tier 10. There are Tier 9s with better penetration than that. But that, it is what it is. With 750 average damage, there has to be a trade-off somewhere. And a lot of people will do nothing but fire gold ammunition with the E100. You're never going to learn to be a better E100 driver if that's all you do. It's like confining yourself to the kind of games where you're driving tanks that you do well in, rather than trying to get into the kind of games where you're not going to do as well, but you can actually learn something if you're paying attention from the better players around you. It's the same thing just firing premium ammunition in the E100. You're never going to learn to be a better E100 driver if that's all you do. And so I've recently, well, I say recently, it's been for a good few months now, I've consciously made the effort to not fire any premium ammunition when I'm driving that tank. And I've had games where I've done 5,000 damage without firing a single round of premium ammunition. It's entirely possible. It's like anything else. You've just got to get better at driving the tank. And you will never get better at it if you keep sticking to your old bad habits. So, while it's important that you have fun when you're playing, I think it's equally important to try to expand your horizons a bit and get better at doing other things so that you can have more fun. Just as an extreme example of the sort of thing I'm talking about, and it's not that extreme because it happens quite regularly, kind of players in War Thunder, for example, who do nothing but fly reserve Russian biplanes and just ruffle stomp all the newbies who've only been playing the game for half an hour. Or people who do the same thing in T-18 tank destroyers in World of Tanks and just run around all day doing nothing but farm kills on Tier 1 and 2 players. It's funny for a while, and I'm sure everybody does it. I know I do. But if that's all you do, all you are ever going to be good at, is farming kills on new players, it's not really much to be proud of, is it? I mean, I'd like to think that you would at least want to be better than that. Get out there, stretch your legs. Try doing something that you're not very good at in order to get better at it, and expand the borders of what it is that you have fun doing. Surely that's something worth aiming for. Anyway, that's it for this week's Mingles with Jingles. I am off to the movies. I was supposed to go and see Fury yesterday. It didn't happen. I still haven't seen it. Those of you who keep asking, Jingles, what do you think of Fury? I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. I have high expectations of it. I've heard it's very, very good. All I care about is that it's good enough to make me forget that Shia LaFucking Burf is in it. If it's that good, I'll be happy. So anyway, I'm hopefully enjoying myself at the movies. As always, take care on that battlefield, watch your six, and I will catch you next time. See you, folks.